welcome everyone to the September 1st council meeting, and we'll start with roll call.
Lane,
Here.
McDaniel,
Here.
Ritter,
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Councilwoman Murdoch is absent this evening, Mayor.
All right, thank you. If everyone stands for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First item is consent agenda, which has approved the minutes of the council meeting of August 18th, approved pay ordinance number 790, consider parade permit for DHS homecoming parade on October 19th, consider agreement for waste tire grant program.
Mayor.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Ritter brought this to my attention, but when Kevin first came on the council, we had talked about the city's ethics policy just doesn't allow you to vote on something that you have quote unquote an interest in. And an interest would be defined if you're, for example, your spouse receives income from an entity that the city is casting a vote for, then by our policy, you're required to abstain and leave the room when that's being voted on. And actually, when we had talked to Kevin about this, Kevin was completely open about maybe we can separate those out and vote on those separately, and maybe we don't have to do them as often, because it doesn't make sense that he would have to, not be able to vote on any consent agenda. And just simply put it, as Kevin pointed out to me before the meeting, there are 2 checks, Kevin, I think that's right, that are payable to DeSoto Chamber of Commerce and then DeSoto Economic Development. So if we could just have a motion to pull those, and we'll vote on those 2 checks separately, that will, keep us in compliance with the policy.
Yeah, that's how we normally do it.
I move we pull check 36-273 and 36-274 from the pay ordinance and, oh, sorry, I'm dyslexic tonight.
What's the numbers? I'm sorry.
36-723 and 36-724.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to remove those 2 checks from the call. Any discussion on that? Okay. Roll call.
Thanks, Kevin, for bringing that to our attention as well.
Brandon?
Yes, I'm just having to
Yeah, you can vote on that.
type it in here real quick. Lane?
Yes.
McDaniel,
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Motion carried.
Okay.
All right, I would make a motion that we would approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion and second for any discussion on any of those items? Seeing none, roll call on consent agenda.
Lane,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
McDaniel,
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion carried.
All right. Now we want
Yeah, if Lane, if you can just reflect in the minutes that Mr. Ritter is leaving the room, and then we can pick up these other 2 checks.
to need a motion for the,
I move we approve payment for checks number 36-723 and 36-724.
I'll second that.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? All right, seeing none, roll call.
Walker,
Yes.
McDaniel,
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Motion carried.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Oh, you're welcome.
When you sign this here, it excludes those two checks.
All right, next up is call of public. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to comment about any matter relating to city business not listed on this agenda. The comments that are discussed in the public may or may not be acted upon by the council during this meeting. There's a 4-minute time limit. Please stand or be recognized by me if you have any thing you need to state. Anybody on call of public? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Old business, we have none. New business, consider text amendment for billboard signage. What? No, I can.
When you get a chance.
Okay. Also want to recognize Willie Dove. Yeah, state representative. Welcome to our
Good evening, Council.
meeting. Glad you could attend.
Glad to be here.
All right, thank you. Back to new business.
Yes, item 4A. Yes, council, what we have here in front of you tonight is a text amendment that in summary would allow the city to consider a special use permit for an electronic billboard sign within the K-10 right-of-way corridor. In summary, if this amendment passes, the process would be a special use permit where an applicant could come in and request through a public hearing process to be able to construct a electronic billboard sign that's as large as 675 square feet. This item was specifically requested by Hype Development, and Mr. Travis Hicks has been the main representative of that group. We held a public hearing at the Planning Commission last month. The Planning Commission received a staff report, and essentially the staff report that they received is the same one that you have in front of you as the memo agenda item 4A. They also received public input at that time. There wasn't any members from the public, but the applicant gave some supporting information in support of the request. And after deliberation on that, Planning Commission recommended unanimously to deny the text amendment, in essence to keep the restriction on the billboard signage in place. By way of the staff report, the professional recommendation from staff summarized and concluded that we should not allow the proposed regulation change. And Planning Commission was in agreement with that. The conclusion of the staff report really was based on 3 areas. I think most significantly were the relatively recent policy decisions that the council and planning commission have made regarding the continuance of prohibiting billboard signage of this nature. Within the last several years, there have been 3 major efforts to overhaul the sign regulations, and each effort was essentially to become more business friendly or more permissive with the types and size and arrangement of signage for commercial properties. And I think the main motivation for those, at least for 2 of those overhauls, was to promote economic development and to make sure that the businesses are in town can effectively advertise their goods and services on their site. The third time was really just to conform with free speech issues that resulted from the Supreme Court case decision. But for the previous 2, there was affirmative direction to continue to prohibit billboard signs. And when we talk about billboard signs, there's some definition nuances there. What we mean are, when people think of billboard signs, they really think of a structural type of, some big thing that you can see from far off, with big poles and big letters and stuff. What we mean in the context of our regulations essentially is a sign that's on vacant property, that it doesn't necessarily advertise for a business right there, but might advertise for some other business somewhere else. So in both of those overhauls, where we were trying to become more permissive and more sensitive to the business side of things, we made affirmative decisions not to allow this type of sign. The other two areas I think are less significant, and there's more room for disagreement on both of them. We did an analysis of the sign regulations of other cities in Johnson County, all of the other cities in Johnson County. And with the exception of Spring Hill, they all prohibit off-premise type signs. Interestingly enough, Spring Hill's regulations are very similar to what the proposed language is that you have in front of you tonight. They would allow a sign on vacant property. The size is similar, the intent is similar, they have similar restrictions on that. So with the exception of Spring Hill, all the other cities don't allow them. The last area was our own comprehensive plan. There is language in our comprehensive plan to the effect that the entrance into the city and the view of the city, particularly along K-10, with the number of motorists that see it each day, is one that, in terms of the comprehensive plan, there are policies and recommendations in place to preserve the aesthetic character of that corridor, which, obviously, beauty being in the eyes of the beholder, I think are points to argue either way. It doesn't say don't allow billboards. It says things like preserve the natural beauty and be careful about development standards and make sure everything looks like, looks like a town that you would want to visit. So in conclusion, that was a staff report, was not to support the change. The Plan Commission also recommended not to enact the change. Patrick prepared two ordinances for your consideration tonight. One of them would override the Planning Commission's recommendation and enact the changes that we see as red lines to the staff report. The other one would accept the Planning Commission's recommendation and deny the requested change.
And to override the planning commission's recommendation, you would need 4 votes in favor of that motion.
Any questions or discussion about billboards?
I'm sorry, I did want to point out that you all received either by email or by hard copy a letter from Corridor and Commerce Park in support of the requested revisions, in support of allowing the billboards. I got that on Tuesday, I think. Sent it out by email.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure you're aware of that.
Any thoughts, Kevin?
Well, I know our city needs some form of availability to promote the activities that are in our town. I would prefer that conform with our current policies. And that, if this is something that Council Dean and the group wanted to do, I think, we're going to be meeting soon with these other groups and maybe proactive to discuss it then. We wanted to change our current policy to do that.
Agree. Anything?
The size is a concern for me, as well as kind of the whole idea of the off-site sign. I'm not fully enamored with that. And to that point, there's a sign on the side or near the site now that seems to be an off-site sign.
It is, yeah.
How was that permitted or
It's
grandfathered, or, it seems new to me. I don't remember it being
It's
there
not.
until I started looking.
Yeah, I think there were some trees that were trimmed around it in recent years, and most recently, the graphic display on the sign, they put a wrap on it. It's advertising something new now. The nearest we can tell, it appeared sometime between 1991 and 96. We can look at the aerial images and see it. What I haven't been able to determine at this time is if that particular type of sign was even allowed at the time. I haven't been able to lay my hands on a set of regulations from 1996. So I can't tell you right now whether that is a legal non-conforming sign or an illegal non-conforming sign. But the fact that the advertising display has changed does not factor into the decision at all. And we talked about this with.
Right,
the
yeah,
Supreme Court.
determine the legality by the message.
Yeah, we really can't. But, there's possibility that, well, three possibilities exist. One, that it wasn't allowed by the regulations and therefore was not permitted and therefore is an illegal sign. Another is that it was allowed by the regulations and permitted at the time, in which case it's a legal non-conforming sign. Or the third possibility is that it was allowed by the regulations but didn't ever get a permit and could be construed as an illegal sign. Don't have an answer for you on that, but we're looking into it.
Originally, that had Sunflower Village on it.
Is that what that,
That's what was on it originally. It's been changed 3 times. It's a billboard sign.
yeah.
Or
Yeah,
else we can't do nothing about it.
And after Clearview City, wasn't it not a Job Corps
Yeah.
job?
I remember, I
Mr.
kinda remember
Goodson
one for
submitted
the,
his job
yeah.
report.
Like had Harris Construction on it for a while.
Yeah, that's right.
Harris
It's just,
Construction.
the new rap must have made it pop out.
Yeah, I think it did, yeah.
I don't have anything else at this time.
Ron?
Well, I've went through this, the planning commission meeting. And first of all, I come and asked Mike today who the staff was, and he's the staff.
Yeah.
I found that out pretty quick today. He is it, because he don't have anybody else. And, in the planning commission, most all of the commissioners brought up about small businesses in DeSoto could not afford to use that sign. But in their report, there's not any information about the small businesses that they contacted to find out if they were going to be able to rent the sign. Well, and then, how much is the rent on the sign? I have no idea. Something about $500 maybe. And then another thing they were concerned about was somebody from another city coming here and wanting to advertise on the sign. Well, that's neither here nor there. I don't think that'd be a good thing, but still, if somebody puts the sign up and they're trying to pay for it, they're gonna have to pay for it by advertising. The other thing is that I saw in here was, we referred back, and we've got copies of what Merriam and Overland Park and Old Latham and Lenexa and all these different towns, what they don't do, what they do and what they don't do. I'm tired of that. This is a little old town, DeSoto, Kansas, trying to grow. How are we gonna grow if we don't tell people that we're here? I tried a year ago with 913 magazine in the Kansas City Star every Wednesday. They don't put nothing in there about the city of DeSoto, but yet they just reap the harvest with Olathe and Shawnee and all them, because they don't care about us. And Olathe don't care about us, and Shawnee don't care about us, and Overland Park. So we need to do what we need to do for our community so our community can grow. And this is how I feel. And I think we should have seen information from some of the small businesses in DeSoto, Kansas that are against this. I didn't see that in their report. And so I guess I'm just saying, why do we have to be like everybody else? Why can't we go on and be DeSoto, Kansas and grow? We're growing now. We've got a grocery store. We're going to have apartments. We raised up the railroad tracks. We're growing and we're coming, and people are coming here. They're going to come here. So that's how I feel. I read this and I've gone over it, and Danny and I talked about it yesterday, and I've gone over it 3 times what the planning commission did. And basically what they say is a small businessman, and I appreciate them wanting to take care of the small businessmen in this town. That's great. But how many of them do we have? How many of them can't advertise on that board if they had to? So that's all. Your turn, Daniel.
Well, the only thing I would like to see done, I respect the planning commission for the work that they did on this. And, we had on this letter that we received that Mike put out to the council and to the mayor, The only thing is, it was asking in that one section for a code change, which I see code changes are handled by the planning commission, not something that is brought up before this council all the time. And it does that in that their position that they do their job, and they do that, and that's what I would like to see done is, you know, whether this will change any ideas from them or not. But since it's asking for a code change, and that's what that group does, I know that the council has authority to change that kind of code according to Patrick, and we can do that. But I just feel that it's a job that we've given to the planning commission, and that they should be aware of those changes to that and look it over and send it back down to the planning commission. And then, of course, they can do whatever they need to do, look at the changes, contact small business if they want to. And if something changes, then, or whether it changes or not, it's still gonna come back before this council. And, you know, but that is primarily their job, and I don't really feel like I want to be responsible to just forget about the planning commission and go ahead and just take it on ourselves. That's the way I feel about it.
And you said to deny making changes other than the planning commission, that we'd have to have 4 votes?
Yeah, that you can override the planning commission's recommendation by a 2/3 majority, which would be 4 out of 6 of the entire governing body. Also, if there was a particular part of the language you didn't like, as long as you have that 2/3 majority, you can change that at the council level without sending it back to the planning commission. But Danny's right, certainly part of the statute indicates that if there's something the council wants the planning commission to take another look at or to consider further, another option you have is to, you know, make a motion to send it back to the planning commission to do that further study and further consideration.
Well, speaking for myself, and only myself, there were 2 things that troubled me with this whole thing, and the size of the billboard. When we went from 400 to 675, that, to me, that's just outrageous. That's just, we worked on getting that 400, and 400 square feet is a lot of square feet, but to take it to 675 is an awful lot. And then restricting any other signs within 4,000 feet, and of a sign that's greater than 400 on the same side of the K-10 highway, that's restricting anybody else. You know, that's pretty restrictive. It might be good for the business putting that sign up, but I think it's real restrictive. 4,000 feet's a lot of square feet. And that was the 2 things that caught my attention, and beyond that, the planning commission worked pretty hard on going over all this stuff, so anyway, that's the way I feel. So, do we have anybody who wants to talk about it?
One other question I didn't, what benefit, or how does this benefit the city other than visibility? I mean, the taxing implications of the sign, do we generate any income off the advertising that is off the sign, or is it just solely the property tax on the parcel of ground and the improvements that sit on it, or?
Yeah, mine.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Well, I was just gonna say, I don't, I think the taxing would depend where the business had owned the sign, since it'd be revenue to them. But
So the income from the advertising would be taxed at whatever, wherever the corporate or whoever owns the sign pays their taxes.
that would be my understanding.
the property tax then, but on the,
I haven't researched that, but I would assume that the parcel of land the sign is on would have increased value that would translate.
actually, I don't know what kind of
But I
value
don't know.
a sign adds to a piece of property.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're not cheap to construct, but I don't know, yeah,
Who does that ground belong to?
well, we're not talking about any particular piece of ground except a strip along K-10.
Okay.
That's what the amendment is. Now, we have an applicant here that might have particular ideas about where a particular sign might be proposed if this amendment changes.
Do you know, and I don't know, I guess maybe a more detailed question would be, like, for example, if that property is zoned agricultural, or, actually, it doesn't matter what the zoning is, but if the county considers it vacant ag land, I wonder, putting up a sign, my guess would be that wouldn't change the use of the property according to the county. I don't know, but.
That's what, I have the same question. I don't have an
Yeah.
answer tonight. That's a good question. I think we can find out. And then
Yeah.
call the county appraiser and find out the question.
I would just like to add, if we're gonna give it back, send it back to the planning commission, that we have some direction of whether we wanna change this policy in the future after we've done this before several times, so that would be my only hitch, is that we figure out what we're gonna do. If we're gonna have them look at it again.
Yeah, and you know, just so everybody's clear about the process here, this wasn't something that was generated organically and we thought, hey, let's change policy again for the fourth time in 5 years. This was a specific request, and our regulations have a mechanism for anybody to come in and request a specific change to the zoning regulations that would apply not just to them, but would apply to, you know, presumably everyone in the city, or more particularly any property along K-10. So it's, I don't know if there's any confusion about that at all, but I didn't mention it, but this is a result of a specific request. And the language that's redlined here really came from a consultation between the applicant and staff, but it's more or less the applicant's intent, and, you know, what they really wanted to come up with at the end is basically what you saw. So this wasn't something that the planning commission thought, oh, this is a good thing to consider, let's consider it.
Back to my question again, who owns that property?
Okay, it's a nuance we're talking about here, but
I
the
don't care
regulation,
where it's gonna be built, it's gotta belong to somebody.
right, the regulations we're talking about would allow an electronic message board to be built anywhere along the K-10 corridor. Now, you're frustrated because it seems
Yeah, I
like I'm
am.
dodging the question.
I'm asking a question, we got a billboard out there, we don't know why it's there, how
Wait,
it's
oh,
out
the
there.
existing
Billboard,
billboard?
okay.
Okay.
And who owns that property?
That property's owned
I
by
probably
corridor,
can't, probably owns
corridor
it.
10 in Commerce.
Yeah, so, where the sign's gonna be, is it gonna be by that sign, is it gonna be east of it?
I'm
Is-
not trying to dodge your question.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm just bringing it
Maybe
to
we
the-
could allow Mr. Hicks to speak on his proposed amendment, but.
Cause I don't
bear
know,
with
all I
me.
know is what I've got right here
Yeah.
from the planning commission, that's the
Right.
first I
So
heard
the
of it,
amendment
so.
would apply to a strip of land along Cape. Anybody could, now, we all know, sitting in this room, that if it happens, the guy in the front row is gonna come in and make a request. And he can tell you maybe exactly where that, looks like he's got some renderings out there.
But is he gonna own the property when he does? That's what I'm getting at.
No, I can't answer that.
I would assume they would, but I'm just assuming.
Well, I would assume so too, but it is, we're talking about two different things here. We've talked about them pole signs, and we approved the pole signs in an area out there. And I don't, another thing I forgot to say is in this report from the planning commission, it says there are no other signs like that on K-10 in Johnson County, other than Spring Hill, but there's one on K-10 to the west of us at the city of Eudora. And,
Yeah.
and it's a lighted sign, it changes numbers, and it's too small, but
It's awful small.
I can't read it. But anyway, I guess maybe I shouldn't be asking who owns that property.
No, I'm not saying that, that's,
Does Kent Fry own it? Where they're gonna put it?
my understanding of where they're gonna put it. The last time I checked on the Ames website, it was owned by either Corridor 10 Commerce or K10 Inc. or something of
Travis, come on up and answer a couple questions.
I'm sorry, guys, but I just gotta get this right in my head, what we're talking about here.
Thank you, Council. My name is Travis Hicks at 708 Fox Chase Court in Lawrence. Thank you for the opportunity to present our text amendment today. I'm going to give you some quick answers to the questions that you have initially, and then if I could, I'd like to turn it over to our attorney to explain the text amendment part, and then to Mark to kind of explain what we're trying to do here along 10 Highway. First, the answer to the ownership question, and it may be easiest for me to point to where everything is at here. The proposed site for the billboard that we're talking about is approximately right here, which is on Lot 8 on the south side of Commerce Drive, okay? The ownership, a little background here, Hike Properties has come in and acquired or has under contract the remaining land that K10 Inc. owned in Commerce Park, which included Harps. And 2 years ago, we purchased that property and have acquired all the property around the corner and up to across from Custom Foods where the apartments are going to go. All of that is either owned by Hike, that is owned by Harps now. This property here where the billboard will go, hopefully, is owned by K10 Inc. We have a contract to purchase that property. So we're proposing that it would go on our property, once acquired, at this location. Does that answer the question as far as? Okay. As far as the text amendment and some of the other parts of why we want to do this, I'd like to turn it over to our attorney to explain some of the reasoning behind the text amendment and then some of the marketing data and information about the sign. Mark can explain. Thank you.
Go ahead. Might hear a little better.
Can you hear me now? Mayor, good evening.
There we go.
Council members, I'm Matt Goff with Barber Emerson Law Firm, 1211 Massachusetts, Lawrence, Kansas. There's a couple general points I'd make to you, which were also made to the Planning Commission, but just to repeat them a little bit. Our objective in suggesting these text amendments was to be as minimally invasive as we can be to your code, because we are wanting to bring to you a request for a specific sign. And you will learn a lot more about that specific sign here in just a minute. But we respect the fact that it's your code. We've provided suggestions to staff, and Mike and Patrick looked at them. The staff ultimately decided what those amendments would look like when they appear before the Planning Commission and ultimately before you. And in that regard, there are two comments. This appears in Exhibit A of your packet on page 3. There's a strike-through that indicates that under the current code, no pole sign can be visible to a contiguous residential area. There it is. EVMB, electronic variable message board. I don't believe that was our suggestion to delete that. We don't believe this sign would be visible from any contiguous residential area, and we would be fine if that were to stay in the code. There's also reference to the 4,000-foot buffer. We're not trying to tell the city what its policy should be with respect to how many of these types of signs you want. We're proposing one. The restriction needs to exist in some fashion, I believe, because I don't know that you want one every 1,000 feet. But we're fine with 2,000 feet and one on each side of the road, for example, instead of 4,000 feet and only on one side of the road. The proposal doesn't need to be that it's our sign and no other. And it's up to your discretion to decide ultimately what the appropriate buffer would be, and whether it's one side of K-10 or both. But we have some flexibility there. There's reference to the K-10 viewshed overlay district. This type of sign isn't expressly prohibited in it, but you see in the staff report references to it. And I'd echo some of the sentiment here today about what other communities are doing. DeSoto is a place that has a tremendous resource that drives right by it every day. And this is an opportunity to tap into that resource to try to get more cars off that road and into town. So with the understanding that we want to be as minimally invasive as we can be to your code and being deferential to the staff's preference in terms of how the code reads, we are ultimately trying to get the ability to bring before you a special use request for a sign that you'll learn more about here from Mr. Mark Kern. Before he comes up, though, I'd be pleased to stand for any questions that you may have of me.
Any questions? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Mark Kern, 5702 Longleaf Drive, Lawrence, Kansas. Partner with Travis Hicks on Hike Properties. And then also part of what we're looking to propose here. When we first looked at the development along K-10, the Commerce Corridor, one of the things that really, with my background being in marketing and advertising, brought to our attention is, and knowing the DeSoto community, is we wanted to look for an opportunity to bring a local means of advertising back to the community. Since the DeSoto newspaper, the DeSoto Explorer, no longer exists, this would allow DeSoto to have that opportunity to advertise on a local basis again. One of the things that we discussed and that we would look to provide from a benefit standpoint to the community is we would dedicate 1% of the billboard messaging as public service announcement for the DeSoto community. Now that's on either side, east or west of the sign. And then also below that we have a 6.5 feet by 24 feet illuminated sign that will be backlit 24 hours a day that we will purchase as a part of this for the city, that the city can regulate what messaging they want as a part of that static sign. To break down a little bit of what does the 1% of the inventory mean, the billboard will rotate 7 messages per minute. What the 1% equates out to is about 100 messages per day, which is what we would dedicate. We're estimating about a 10% vacancy rate on our revenue basis. But what we will guarantee for the city or the community as public service announcement, 1% of that inventory to promote public service events, DeSoto Days, activities like that.
Why do you need the extra square footage on that? 400 square foot is a pretty good sized sign.
Well, you're looking at
a McDonald's sign.
you're looking at an additional 275 square feet from what now exists. And really, you have about 17 seconds visibility. If from I believe from the traveling east, it's about 16-second visibility from where we're proposing. And with that, with the 16 seconds, you're going to rotate through 2 messages. So if you go any smaller, that reduces the time, or really the visibility of what you're going to be able to read on that billboard. And that's the reason for the size of the sign. When you get to a smaller electronic sign, you have to get a lot closer to be able to read the message. One of the nice things in looking at the traffic count on DeSoto, there's about 31,500 vehicles that travel that highway on a daily basis, which If you put that on a monthly basis, that's about 945,000 vehicles a month. Let's communicate to that audience. Let's put our message in front of them and look to see what we can pull off of the K-10 highway. And to address, I believe one of the questions that came up with Planning Commission was affordability. Looking at this billboard, we have the capability of the software that we're purchasing for this is to traffic this like you would a TV station. We're able to change the message on a weekly basis. And the $500 amount is something that I had proposed as an estimated cost on what, and that $500 is for a week. That's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that a small business can put their message in front of that 31,000 cars a day for that week. I don't know if you can buy an 8th-page ad in the Kansas City Star for 1 day for $500. I mean, to put it in comparative, I mean, a week long having 31,500 cars see your message a day, that's a pretty good benefit for a small business owner that can budget that. That pretty much is a little bit of my background, statistical information, and I'll stand for questions if anybody has
Any questions? Guess that's it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back up and see if there were any other questions for me, and also touch on, the fact that we're proposing this is because what we believe is important for DeSoto to, as Mark described, pull those vehicles off of the highway, have them recognize what is here in DeSoto, who can advertise locally. We've got businesses that can do it, Harps. We've got possibly a Huhtamaki. If you notice in the letter, it was signed by Huhtamaki's general counsel, who was very much in favor for this kind of a message. She talked about the ability for them to be able to put a now hiring sign up there. And they're trying to hire employees. What a better way to do that than to put it right there next to their company. Any way we can get vehicles off the highway to come to DeSoto for whatever reason it might be, benefits not just that business, but any other business that they may stop at here. So I think we need to look beyond who is actually advertising on the sign, but who it might benefit as well. Vehicles that travel to town, to come to Harps, to come to Huhtamaki to fill out an application, or wherever it might be, they're going to stop most likely somewhere and spend money here. That benefits the city. That's what we're trying to drive ultimately, is the ability to capture that audience off of 10 Highway, have them recognize DeSoto. We need that here. We need them to see DeSoto. We need them to be able to physically be here. And I believe this is a very good way to start that process. The questions about the sign, every 4,000 feet, as our attorney Matt had described, we're open to that. So if that's an issue, that's just a number that was just put out there. Most cities have that kind of restriction in their sign ordinance to prevent a billboard every 500,000 feet, whatever it might be. 4,000 protects a pretty good sized area there. If you want to scale it back to 2,000, that would work as well. Keep in mind, it has to be a commercially zoned property in order to be eligible for this type of a project, of a sign. Within Corridor 10 there, the park, Commerce Park, that's all zoned commercially at this point. On the south side of the street of 10 Highway, I don't believe any of that is zoned commercially at this point. So there would be no eligible applicants at that point on the south side of 10 Highway.
Isn't the property directly across the south?
It's got a mix of zoning.
I mean, as I recall, you remember when we were rezoning the stuff coming that was county zoned? I just remember the guy that bought my father-in-law's mom's place, bringing that in as a commercial, that 80 acres Just, it's directly west of the dog park, so on the south, kind of catty corner to your site right there.
I mean, it may be, I'm not aware that it is, but to the point, there's limited commercial zoning where you can actually place a sign of this nature today. So with that, I would open it up to any other questions before I take a seat.
I'm just afraid if we open up for pole signs like that, off-site pole signs, then we start something and we won't be able to stop it. We'll have signs all over the place like that. And that wasn't our intent. Our intent was to allow pole sign like McDonald's, but only on their property and to that size. And I think that was pretty reasonable at the time, and I just don't see the reasoning behind such a big sign and off-site. You're asking for an awful lot. We've done a lot for you with the abatement and trying to help you along. So it's not like we haven't done anything for you guys, but the planning commission been through all this and made their recommendation, and I think, in my opinion, we ought to stay with the planning commission's recommendation.
Honestly, I don't disagree with the need for advertising in our city. I just think we need to make the policy more and not just a message.
Yeah, we have a policy. They changed just about every paragraph in here. They made changes to whatever they're planning on doing. But the planning commission has gone through all these and made the recommendation to deny, and there's a reason for it. Any other discussion? Any motion?
Need an ordinance number, I get one, we gotta pass an ordinance one way or the other, right?
Yes, sir. Councilman, that ordinance number is 2407.
I make a motion, we approve ordinance 2407, an ordinance upholding the planning commission's decision recommendation to not revise the text of Article 10 of the city zoning regulations.
Well, second on that? Kevin seconded. Got that, Lana?
Yes, sir.
Roll call.
Lane,
Yes.
McDaniel,
No.
Walker,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion carries to uphold the planning commission's recommendation.
All right. Item 4B, consider temporary use permit for the Great Call Adventure Race.
That would be me, council. The city of DeSoto is once again partnering with the city of Eudora and the Eudora Convention and Visitors Bureau for the second annual Great Call Adventure Race. There are a little bit of change this year in that there will not be any challenge points within the city of DeSoto. They will kayak and canoe down the river to Riverfest Park, and there they will get out, grab some food, whatever they need to do, hop on their bicycles and bike back to Eudora. So due to less challenge points within the city, the volunteers will be about 125 people total. They will work with the Johnson and Douglas County sheriff's officers and fire department. There shouldn't be any roadblocks that they will need since it's an open race, basically. They have requested that the $50 temporary use permit fee be waived, and they have also provided a copy of their 501c3 designation from the IRS. So Mike and I reviewed the application, and staff recommends approval of the temporary use permit. If council decides to waive the fee, would you please include that in your motion?
If there's not any discussion, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion.
You know,
I make a motion that we approve the temporary use permit for the Great Call Adventure Race, waiving the $50 application fee.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
second.
Second by Kevin. Any further discussion on that? Okay, roll call.
McDaniel?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes.
Ritter?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion carried.
Okay, moving on, item 4C, receive workshop presentation on DeSoto's government structure.
Yes, council, this is the first in a series of, I think, what will be 4 workshops that'll kind of kick off our visioning and goal-setting process that'll wind up, hopefully culminate next spring, sometime around May. Tonight's discussion, you know, calling it a workshop, so what we decided to do with these is wait till the last agenda item on the council agenda, and discuss these so that we don't, you know, we can have some back and forth and take as long as we want on these items, answer any questions. Typically, we'd be in a workshop, we'd be all sitting around the table and just kind of have a discussion. And so I kind of like that sort of feel to it, you know, interrupt me, ask a question, interject your own thoughts as we go along. This is just kind of a dialogue more than a presentation. The information I gave you, we've got a PowerPoint presentation that I'll go through. I'll try not to read every word of that, but you know, I do want to get the ideas out and discuss and answer any questions you might have about that. That's Exhibit A to the staff report, so that's all the fancy-looking, double-sided PowerPoint-looking stuff. Exhibit B is a document that Patrick prepared for me, and it goes into detail about DeSoto's form of government, the mayor-council form of government, some of the state statutes regarding what our duties and powers are, and we'll talk about some of those as we go through the presentation. It's a 2-page thing that basically lays out the legalities behind the form of government, behind our home rule authority, behind the classification of the city, you know, being a city of the second class. And then it references the governing body handbook. I'm sorry, that thing's 4 pages long. Exhibit B5. The Exhibit C to the staff report is this document titled Governing Body Manual. And it is really a companion document to this publication. It's put out by the League of Kansas Municipalities Governing Body Handbook. This one I've got here in my hand is from, what, 2013's version? Yeah, this is from 2013. If you attend the League conference, if you're, is that
In
right?
October.
In October, let's don't forget to sign up for the League conference. They give you one of these, Lana?
I believe that.
Or do we have to pay for one
that's-
of these?
Those come through when they do the mayors and council in May, when they have that meeting in May.
okay,
But we
okay.
can order those from the league. I think they're about
They're about
40.
$30 a piece. Yeah, but it's a really good, it's a good publication to kind of work through, especially if you're new to the council or if any of this is new to you. As we work through it, this is a really good publication. But the governing body manual that you have in your packet is a document that was prepared in 2014, and I'm sure it was distributed to the council, but you know, I don't know how. I don't remember going through it in detail or hashing it out, but basically it takes this governing body handbook and points out the things that are applicable to DeSoto. So it kind of weeds out all the stuff that doesn't apply, highlights the stuff that does apply, and it's kind of a really good overall kind of theoretical best case scenario on, you know, what the role of each facet of the governmental agency would be. So I'll have that. I don't plan on going over that. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna stand up at the podium so I can read my PowerPoint. And just kind of go through the structure and form of the thing. And then, you know, if you have any questions along the way, stop me and we'll have a discussion about some of it. Does all that sound okay to everybody? Sure. Lana, I was thinking I would turn these lights off and maybe you leave those on.
Okay.
I think it does the projector a little better. Then I have to start my slideshow from over here because I can't see it from And stop me if I get boring.
Stop. I'm kidding, Mike.
I'm happy to stop. Okay, so what's in the slideshow presentation? It really follows that governing body manual pretty closely. It follows the League of Kansas Municipalities handbook pretty closely too. We're going to talk about our form of government, a little bit about home rule authority. We'll talk about our classification as a city of the second class. We don't refer to ourselves as a second-class city. It's always a city of the second class. We're going to talk about the duties of office of the council and the mayor, and we'll also talk about officers and employees of the city. And these are called out specifically because there's specific state statutes related to the city administrator position, the clerk position, attorney, prosecutor. I'm not sure there's much on the city engineer, and then we'll talk about staff as well. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the roles of advisory boards and other groups connected with municipal governance. And these include Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals, and also partners with the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development and other boards like the Park Board and Fire Board. These are not every city has all these. Every city more or less has a Planning Commission. Every city more or less has a Board of Zoning Appeals. Most have Chamber and EDC. Park boards, some do, some don't. We happen to have a consolidated fire district, so we went through a very particular process to set up that board. Other cities have more advisory boards than this, architectural review boards, neighborhood improvement boards. You know, there's all sorts of possibilities there, but these are our main ones. So continuing on the form of government, DeSoto operates under the mayor-council form of government. This is by far the most common among Kansas cities. There's 627 cities in Kansas, and 559 of them operate under this form. The original statutes, when the mayor-council form of government was set up, contemplated a mayor that had administrative control over the daily operations and staff and hiring and firing. And many smaller communities still have that in place. The mayor's kind of in charge. You know, if a day-to-day decision needs to be made, they go to the mayor. And that's kind of how it started. Over the years, more and more cities have transferred that responsibility onto a professional administrator, and we're among those. Our city code puts the administrator in charge. Now, the administrator, as we know, we just did this recently, is an appointed position. I have a particular contract. It's appointed once and then doesn't come up for appointment each year, but the appointment remains unless the contract is not renewed or a 2/3 vote of the governing body decides a change is needed. So with the administrator, as it's lined out in our code, the administrator supervises the day-to-day operations, responsible for hiring and firing. And under our structure, the governing body members are obviously political leaders that set policy. You represent the city as a whole, concentrate on policy issues, and then you rely on a professional administrator to implement those policies through day-to-day operations of staff. That's in the broadest term of the structure that we have here in place. Home rule authority, I think this is a pretty understood concept, and if you've never heard of it, then it really won't be news, but I guess when it was passed, it kind of was a big deal. This allows local cities the ability to govern themselves without the involvement of the state. I think without this home rule authority, we would be having to ask the state permission if we wanted to disallow sidewalks on skateboards on sidewalks uptown. With these, we're allowed to implement zoning regulations and other codes affecting properties and people in the city without involvement from the state. This applies to anything that basically is not, the state does still control. The state has certain requirements that are, that we do have to follow, as long as those requirements and statutes apply to all the cities within the state uniformly. So the state still does control, and obviously the U.S. Constitution and Kansas Constitution are binding on us. In exercising home rule powers, we may legislate any subject other than those reserved to the exclusive jurisdiction of the legislature by the home rule amendment itself. And there's a few of those things that apply. Then moving on then, the city classification. We actually, was it a charter ordinance, Patrick, or a declaration that we made? We had been a city of the third class until 2007. There's only 3 classes in Kansas.
Right.
And so in 2007, our population exceeded 5,000, and so what did we do? Was it a...
Well, once an official census puts you over 5,000, you're required to report that to the governor, and then the governor makes a proclamation that you are officially a city of the second class.
So
that's
right.
what happened.
And really, for us, internally and practically, it didn't make much difference in the way we operate, the way we do business. We're still a council, mayor form of government. There were a few changes. What you know what those are?
Well, what we going to a city of the second class, when that happens, by statute, the city is divided into wards, and so the council members, you would run according to whatever ward you lived in. And at the time that, in 2007, the council at the time decided that, I don't know exactly the reason, I think some of it was they didn't think there'd be that much interest, that you would have a person from each of the different wards that would run each time. So the consensus was that that we maintain the system that we had, and that is everyone's elected at large. And so we simply did that, and many cities do that, where you just charter out of the state statute on city of the second class. And so the city of DeSoto, we have, I think, 2 charter ordinances, maybe 3, that kind of deal with essentially saying we are going to charter out of those statutes that set up wards. And then another change was the appointment each year, what the council at the time decided, that the yearly appointments were somewhat of a, I guess, some viewed it as a stressful thing, like, gosh, am I gonna be appointed this year, you know? So what the council went to is that appointed positions, essentially, once the mayor makes an appointment into that position, that person stays in that position until a majority of the city council decides that they want to make a change. So, and that's, if there's a specific contract that says something different that's negotiated with the council, then that would be an exception to that. But by and large, and so if that happened, then the mayor would appoint a new person into that position, and then, but it got away from the annual appointments each May of appointing. But other than that, there's not a whole lot of difference between the third class and the second class.
The other thing that happened to us when we exceeded 5,000 population is we became responsible for bridge inspections. You know, the federal highway puts that responsibility on counties for smaller towns, but once they get above 5,000, the thought is, now you're big enough, you can be responsible, and that's when we started having to do those biannual bridge inspections. There's probably some other smaller stuff that applies because we reached that threshold. The next category then is duties of office, and I've started with the city council. There's a neat quote in there from the National League of Cities that I think defines what a council is in the most broad terms. That says the city councils are legislators of a community who are democratically elected to decide which services will be provided and how to pay for them. And this gets at, I think, what we've heard pounded into our heads more than once, that the single biggest policy document that you make is that annual budget. And the annual budget is you exerting control on behalf of the people who elected you over how much they're going to pay for which services they're going to get. And so there's an unlimited number of policy decisions you make when you think about how much money you're going to spend on those services. So I thought that was a pretty fitting, in the broadest sense, what people expect a council to do. In general terms, the council decides on legislative issues, and you set policy directives needed to carry out the goals and objectives of the community. And what this means to us is that we need to establish goals and objectives for the community. And that's what this whole process is about. That's, this is kind of the first night in a 9-month process of finding out what those goals and objectives are from internally here and from our constituents and from the community at large. Council employs a professional administrator to carry out the duties and policies that you develop. That's the city administrator position. You act through me, and I act within the day-to-day operations of the city in terms of who's employed and what their function is to carry out those goals and objectives and policies. We do have a code of ethics. I think everybody's aware of that. We saw an example of it here earlier tonight from a recusal from a couple of checks. I think it's worth kind of looking at those and thinking about those each year. It's easy to make a mistake, or honest mistakes can be made if you don't keep those in mind. Number 4 there is just a list of duties for a council member. I'm not going to read each one of those. They have to do with setting the annual budget, long and short-term objectives and priorities. You are the principal legislators of the local government. So, like we did tonight, we were looking at a piece of legislation that related to signs, and we decided not to change anything, but we do that pretty routinely. It starts with a recommendation from the Planning Commission, but you are the ones that make that law, essentially.
Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just while I was thinking of it, I thought, I had talked to Lana, and Lana, I've even forgotten when we decided, but by statute, each year, you as elected officials are supposed to communicate or fill out, I think it's called a statement of substantial interest, any changes. And as Lana and I discussed, really if there are no changes, there's probably no need to fill out the form. But we just decided, given that that's probably not something that that is at the top of your mind, I think it's a good exercise that we distribute that form to you each year, just so if you've changed jobs, or maybe you're working for someone that you weren't working at the time you ran for election, that would sort of just be a reminder, so you could look through, if there are any changes, you get that listed, so we're complying with that statute, just so that it's of record what substantial interest
Is that a form that you fill out when you run for office?
Yeah. Yep.
So it's the
Yep.
same form?
Right. Same
I think
form.
we decided in January when they do their withholding form,
Yep.
keep it,
Okay.
just keep it
Perfect.
together at that
Yeah.
time.
So you'll be seeing that. This is a due diligence thing. Thanks, Mike, for
Good.
letting me interrupt.
That's fine. Duties of the mayor. These, I didn't make these up. These come straight out of the city code. Section 1-205 talks about responsibility, powers, and duties of the mayor. Obviously presides at the meetings of the governing body. He's got tie-breaking vote on anything where the council is deadlocked on. Doesn't happen too often. We're a 5-member board, but if somebody's absent, it does. Has superintending control of officers and affairs of the city. That goes back to the state statute regarding that. And it's again reflected here in our ordinances as well. There's language about making sure that the city ordinances are complied with. The mayor appoints members to the planning commission, the board of zoning appeals. I think there's provisions for him to appoint to the park board. Those things, what we typically do is it's a mayoral appointment with the consent of the governing body. There's also language about communicating, basically, it says from time to time, communicate to the council such information and recommendations as he or she may deem advisable. I think that has more to do with setting agendas. If there's and really in practice, I think any council member can do this. Lori did it at the last meeting. There's a particular concern she has about broadband service in the city, and she brought that up when we had a discussion. We formed a committee, and we're going to follow that. Now, Lori couldn't come into my office, and well, she could, but in practice, technically, she shouldn't come into my office and say, Mike, we ought to get a broadband committee together, and I'll be on it, and Danny will be on it, and a couple more people, and let's start meeting and let's start talking about that. If that were to happen, great idea. We'll bring it up at council meeting, and if we get a head nod, we'll go ahead. That's how practically it would happen. But this says that the mayor does it. I think really any member of the council can do it. Just with the governing body's consent, I guess you wouldn't have to vote on it. But in essence, the mayor can do things on his or her own that the governing body could really only do as a full member of a 5-member board. And then sign orders and drafts upon the treasury. That sounds like something out of the Constitution, but it means he signs checks. The next item is administrator. I don't think it'll be too much of a surprise to anybody. Administrator position here. This is in our city code. This doesn't necessarily come from state statute, but talks about supervising day-to-day operations, responsible for hiring and firing of all city employees. The department heads report to me. It does talk about the general practice of the mayor and council is that you guys issue orders and then to me, and then I follow those up with the department heads. I don't think we have a problem with that. I don't really know that we've ever really had any issues there. But this is the word in the city code. It does, though, say that at no time shall the administrator's power supersede the council on any action of the governing body. And I think that's intuitive as well. At least it is for me. City clerk talks about, and the city clerks have been around since cities have been around. I mean, they came before public works directors or administrators or a lot of this other stuff. I think historically the profession kind of sprung up from.
Came back in the Bible, Acts, chapter Acts.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, that's right. There were money lenders or turning over tables or something. I don't remember. Custodian of all records, carry on official correspondence of the city, keeping records of the proceedings. I think our clerk's doing that right now. Enter appointment of office of the date in the journal. In the journal, I'm not sure what the journal is, but Lana's journal is a recipe box that she keeps on her desk with some cards in it to see
We
who's on
also
the planning
have a
commission,
file.
who's up. Oh, there's another formal file? I like the recipe box better. And technically responsible for publishing ordinances and making sure the ordinances get kept in order and fashion. The city attorney, there are requirements for, obviously the city attorney has to be an attorney, so it talks about that. Attending meetings, advising council on matters of legal questions. When requested, give opinions on those, drafting ordinances, approving ordinances as to form and legality. He doesn't necessarily sign on that, yes, it's a good idea that we should only have 4 dogs per household, but he just says, yeah, it's okay for the city to make this requirement in the form of this ordinance is okay. So I think we call it an testament, or you're attesting to the legality of the ordinance. Not
Just
that-
one thing I'd just add, the code of ethics, under that code, I'm, like, if you guys ever have some question, I'm tasked with interpreting that code and, making decisions as to, is something a conflict? And that's why, for example, Kevin came to me before the meeting, just because that's something that, so I just throw that out there. If you ever have any issues or concerns about that, definitely you can consult with me on that.
The last bullet point there, perform such other duties as may be prescribed by the governing body. So, that could be,
Says there attend planning commission and board of zoning appeals meeting.
Yeah, and I
You don't
definitely,
attend.
well, I attend the Board of Zoning Appeals, but I was surprised to see that too, that
Planning commission.
attending the planning commission, it's been on, if we have like a controversial thing, I'll attend, but yeah, it's true, normally I don't attend all those. I know that's not by statute, so I think that just,
yeah, it's just straight
part
out
of our city code. But
Yeah.
the Board of Zoning Appeals is different though, it is,
Mhm.
that's something that I believe the statute makes some reference to the city attorney attending those.
And those are meetings that are for a specific variance or
Right.
contentious
Yeah.
type issue, so
Yeah.
it's important that
Yeah.
you're there.
We do have an officer, the city prosecutor is a specific officer that gets appointed. And, they attend meetings when directed. She is the one who handles all the code violations, traffic tickets is most of what she handles. She works with Boots and the judge in terms of prosecuting citations that are issued either by the codes official or by any of the Johnson County Sheriff's officers. There is another office, city engineer. I am still the city engineer, and really all it says is that the engineer has to be a licensed professional in the state of Kansas, and he's at the direction of the administrator and perform duties regarding engineering services, and that's really all ours says. The engineer and administrator at current get along just fine, so I don't see any problems. The next slide is just city staff. This is, and you can't see it very well there. I know you can't see it very well here. I can get you a full-size version of this. This hasn't changed really. I don't think we've made any changes in years. Really, the only thing I've done here is updated the date on it, and I did put under the community development director. The director used to be the city engineer there. Well, that's not me anymore. I'm just putting the director there as a vacant position because it's currently vacant. We also currently have a vacant planner position, which I don't necessarily intend to fill both of those positions, but we know those are open. Those are fully budgeted positions the rest of this year and next year as well. The other changes there are just names. We have a couple of new employees in the street department, one in the parks department, and one switched from water plant operator to meter reader recently. So really there's no structural changes there. The next category I want to talk about are roles of boards and advisory groups within the city. We touched on which groups those were. The first one I thought we should mention is the Planning Commission. We considered a recommendation from them tonight. I think everybody's more or less aware of what they do. They meet once a month. There's 7 members. They're all appointed by the mayor. Our regulations mimic state statute on this. 5 members of our planning commission reside inside the city limits, and 2 reside outside the city limits, but within 3 miles of the city limits. And I think the intent of that is just to make sure as the city grows and expands in territory that the territory lying directly outside the city has some sort of a representation on the planning board, the planning commission. The commission serves as an advisory board to the council on almost all matters. They're the gatekeepers of the zoning and subdivision regulations. Their main focus is to make sure that any new development, or one of their main jobs, is to ensure that any new development meets the requirements that are contained in the city code. So we need to make sure that there aren't, that the buildings meet setbacks, that their apartment complex isn't too dense, the development standards are met, things like that. Sometimes the planning commission role is in conflict with economic development interests. Sometimes it's in conflict with maybe the general wishes of the council even, or some facet of the community. And for that reason, sometimes planning commission is put under the gun a little bit in terms of political pressures or just uncomfortable meetings. We see that, when development pressure is high, when development is booming, you get more of those conflict points. Over the last several years during the recession, we haven't had a whole lot of those, but you might see those from time to time. And the Planning Commission is set up as a non-political board. They're not elected, they're appointed. And I think that's part of the reason that, their role is more technocratic in nature, and that's kind of a bad word, but, they just need to make sure that, that people follow the rules. And they don't set the rules, you guys set the rules. And so, sometimes there can be conflict there. They're also responsible for long-range planning. The main document for that is a comprehensive plan. And we'll talk about that maybe a little bit in the next work session. And also, as you've heard, they suggest amendments to the regulations, but they can't change them on their own. That's you guys that change regulations. I've listed the membership of the Planning Commission. Richard Hemphill's been on since '04. Ian McPherson was appointed in '13, as was Mark Morris. Ramona Allenbrand's been on since 2010. Dennis Wallen since '11. Bob Garrett came on in '11, and Linda Lane just came on earlier this year. We do have 3 of those members whose appointment terms expired in the spring. That's not necessarily a problem. The structure is that, if the planning commissioner is not reappointed, he serves in his same capacity or her same capacity until he either is or there's a replacement for him. So just because those terms have expired, it's not necessarily a problem that we need to address right now. The second advisory board that I want to bring up is the Board of Zoning Appeals. This one is an appointed board. It historically had been 3 members, but several years ago we added 2 members to that, appointed by the mayor to 3-year terms. The BZA is a quasi-jurisdictional board, and they have a very focused role, responsibilities. It's really kind of only 2 areas, and one of them you don't get too much. One area is appeal. If someone in the course of getting a building permit, let's say, disagrees with staff's interpretation of the regulations, he can take that to the Board of Zoning Appeals and say, we have a disagreement, I'd like the Board of Zoning Appeals to settle this matter for us. And it really is sort of a court proceeding where he presents evidence, maybe the staff present evidence, and the Board of Zoning Appeals would decide the case. The more common application they get are variances, where someone wants to encroach upon a building setback, or some other facet of the regulations that they can't meet for any particular reason. They take it to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and they can grant variances to a number of items in our regulations. The reason they're quasi-jurisdictional is because their decision is essentially final. That decision can't be appealed up here to the City Council or to the Planning Commission or anywhere else except district court. So if the BZA turns somebody down and they're really aggrieved by that, they have to sue us. That's the recourse after that.
Can a city council member be appointed to the BZA?
Yes, actually in some cities, the BZA is the Planning Commission, can be the same board. The council can't be, I don't know if it can be completely the council.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Can one member be?
Yeah, don't know, never had that question posed.
Yeah.
We have planning commission.
I don't,
So I'm both.
Yes.
I
Yes, we
really
do. Linda
don't.
serves on both. And that's why I knew that, planning commissioners can, I know that for sure.
You can't be elected and appointed at the same time.
Right, I think it would be considered an incompatible position because you're, on the BZA, you're essentially granting variances from the governing
Essentially, the
body's
governing,
rules. So
yeah.
you'd sort of be, yeah, I think that'd be considered an incompatible position.
Good point. Yeah. The membership there is shown, Bill Sedgwick, Richard Brazukas, Linda Lane, Doug Pickard, Steve Winslow. Some of those terms have expired. Again, this is actually, gosh, I'm not sure they all haven't expired. It's the same.
Like all but Bill.
Yeah.
They haven't met for a while though, right? We haven't ever, have we?
Yeah, no, they don't have regular meeting times. They only meet when we have an
I don't, I
application.
can't recall,
I don't remember the last time. They probably meet on average twice a year, maybe, if that. Really only happens when there's an application.
Mike, also speaking incompatible, I did notice under city engineer, it indicates that the city engineer will work at the direction of the city administrator.
That's why I said the
Wonder, do you wanna be your-
two of them are getting along okay right now.
That's something we probably ought to revise.
That's a good point, Val.
Because surely you wouldn't want to work under the direction yourself, right?
As long as my wife isn't involved, I'm okay. Okay, the next advisory group I want to touch on are the Chamber and EDC. And this information came from Sarah, so Sarah, stop me if I say something that you don't like. The Chamber, and I didn't know this before, but the Chamber evidently is a 501c6 not-for-profit membership-based organization. Mission is to further the interest of its members in the business community. And there is this is the board, right? The board, not the membership are, how many members are in the chamber?
Roughly 145.
145. So these are the board members: Stephanie Swenson, Julie Coover, Diane Redford. I don't know why don't I know that? I know Mike. Anton Toff. 5-member board, and chair is Sarah. What's your position with them?
I'm the executive director.
Executive director. Okay. The Economic Development Council is under the umbrella of the chamber. Is the DeSoto's EDC, a membership-based organization as well, to promote economic development through efforts that seek to improve economic well-being, quality of life by creating and relating jobs and supporting growth of the tax base. Again, I think we support both the chamber and the EDC through budgeted allocations each year to support their efforts. Sarah is the leader of both the chamber and the EDC groups. She splits her time between those two. And really, they're kind of sometimes at odds, those two groups. They could be, in terms of if you're wanting to bring in an economic development opportunity, proposed business that might compete or not be necessarily compatible with an existing business who also might be a member of the chamber, sometimes is a difficult position to navigate. But I think I know over my time here, and certainly moving forward, a very close relationship between city staff and the EDC and chamber is very important. The EDC cannot promote businesses, they cannot promote the right businesses at the right time in the right places without the involvement of city staff. I can't imagine trying to do that job in a vacuum. She'd do her job, she'd bring it in here, something, we wouldn't like something about it, she'd have a client, it wouldn't work. So, the meshing of those two organizations is very important. I think with Sarah being so close, her office is right here in this building, there's no reason we can't continue that relationship moving forward. We do have the members there in that box are the board members. Again, we do have 2 members of the council are actually board members of the EDC, Rick and Lori, and myself as the administrator is an ex officio non-voting member of the EDC board. Anything else about EDC or chamber, Sarah?
Well, the mayor's on the EDC board as well.
Oh, did I not mention? I'm sorry. Didn't mention that. Sorry, Mayor. Didn't mean to overlook you.
That's all right.
Okay, the park board, the park board's role over time has changed quite a bit. I think historically they were a group of interested citizens that really had a lot of energy to go out and do projects, and do maintenance efforts and improvement efforts inside in the park to better those facilities. That's morphed now more into an advisory role. We have 7 members. They're all appointed by the mayor. A member of the governing body should be selected to serve as a non-voting member. This comes straight out of the code. I don't know if we have a particular.
I recall Lori volunteered to be that person
Did
at
she?
one time.
Well, she's not here, so she
She's
shall
here to
be.
defend herself.
She certainly can be. It does say that the park board should develop and recommend a long-range plan for the future development of parks. And we did that. We have a park master plan. I think it was in 2007. And that document is still around. And I think there is a strong desire, at least on Jay's part and Justin's part, and the Parks Department to update that document. Maybe completely throw that document in the trash can and start with a new parks master plan. And actually, I think it's on our list of potential capital improvements to look at for next year.
Sorry, Mike, can I just add one more thing, just to, the mayor, when the mayor gathered donations for the park, at that time to get tax exempt status, we formed it's a nonprofit under Kansas law. So all of you, as long as you're elected to this governing body, you also are on record with the state as being a member of this board that has control over these donated funds. Now, I don't think that fund has much money in it right now. I think maybe $500. I don't know if you remember, Mayor, but
No, I think I thought we were up to 1,500.
could be. But I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. If you see some reference, I mean, if you want it, you can go to the Secretary of State's office. Each year, I have to file a report listing the governing body members as officers. So if you ever see that reference, that's what that's about. So to take money out of that fund, you would vote as that board, not as a city council, but it's essentially.
Take 3 members or more.
Right. Again, Mike, that's just something
Okay,
that
yeah.
came to mind. I
Yeah.
didn't remember that before.
I think there's a desire to engage the park board more fully going on, and we'll talk about
We're
this.
going to advertise for park board members,
To get some volunteers that might
Yeah.
want to serve on that. Yeah.
There's some ideas tossed around about how we're going to advertise and put it on the website. And
Yeah.
we need to do that.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 7 members, and we only have 5 on there, and so, yeah, we do need to fill that board, but, if we're gonna put members on there, we probably ought to have an idea of what it is we want
What they're
them to
gonna
do
do.
moving forward, and if we decide to do a master plan revamp, that's a perfect excuse to get more people involved. The last board that I want to talk about is the fire board, Northwest Consolidated Fire District. I don't think there's anybody in the room that doesn't know basically what the format is here. We formed this in 2010 as a combined the DeSoto Fire District and Johnson County Fire District 3 It's a 5-member board. 2 members are appointed by the city of DeSoto and 2 by Johnson County, and the last one is a rotating basis. They serve 3-year terms. So I've got the membership down there. Oddly enough, Walter McDaniel was originally appointed by the city in 2014 to fill, I think, 1 year of someone's term that came off. And then the county appointed Walter for another 3-year term. So it went from the city's appointment to the county's appointment, but it was the same guy. So that, I think that was a little odd, wasn't it? Is that right, Lynn?
Doug Bedford, doesn't his term expire in 19 instead of 16?
Yeah, it wouldn't expire the same day it appointed, right, would he? Well, I think he's
December
filling,
31.
he's filling somebody else's. So he was appointed earlier this year, and I think
Okay.
that
And
appointment.
I think you're right, just the end
expires
of
the end
December,
of this
we
year.
have to reappoint
You
him
have to
or refill that
yeah.
position.
So, yeah, it looks, I think that's
Chris Keeter.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that by resolution, so we keep track. There was, in the beginning, there was a lot of confusion about
Yeah.
who was appointed to, but I think we got that under control now.
Well, that was all I had for governmental structure. If we have any other questions or dialogue or points of focus, I think what, moving forward as we do each one of these sort of things, and this one, the governmental structure might not be one that we can point to a whole lot that we really want to take action on. Sounded like there's a few things though. We want to get park board members, we need to advertise and fill those park board member roles. That was one that we wanted to do. I think I don't have. Yeah, I think that was kind of the only kind of area of focus. And I think if Lori was here, I've heard from Lori before that she really has an interest in engaging the park board more, having their role as advisors be more pronounced than it has been the last several years. But with the other workshops that are coming up, what I want to do, I think the intent was to get everybody on the same page with all the same information so that we can all kind of move forward together. As we're working through those workshops, I think it would be beneficial if we have particular areas of focus that we're interested in, that we want to pick back up later or look at more in-depth into. I think we just make note of those as we move forward through the process. And so here we've got kind of park board concerns is the one here. Other than that, I think we might be able to wrap this work session up. So I'll do that.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
That wasn't too boring.
Well, that wasn't too bad, huh?
Very informative.
You're up
Thanks.
here.
Good
My
job.
keyboard's up here. But it wasn't working, so I have to take it back
Out of range.
over. Out of range, yeah. Don't let me hold you up, Mayor.
Welcome. But I want to make sure you're available.
I am.
Next up was executive session, which we don't have any.
Correct.
And then we'll be back to Mike when he gets done.
Oh, you're waiting on me now.
Well, I can go around you.
No, I'm ready. I'm ready. I have a few things that I want to.
A few.
So, just. Yeah, just, I'm sorry. I'll make it quick. I sent out an email to you all about these good governance quarterly meetings that I want to start. The intent is to get together with all the different entities that are involved in providing services for DeSoto, just on a quarterly basis, just at staff level more or less. Talk about issues or common concerns, or coordination and things, and just get in the same room so everybody kind of knows one another. The first one of those I scheduled for October 11th at 1 p.m. I think we'll have it here in this room. Of course, you're all invited. The intent is that it's kind of a staff level sort of coordination, but I would like at least one member of the council, if you could make that meeting, to kind of be there and represent the governing body. I don't know if anybody's available at that time or interested in doing that. I know it's during the day. It's in the middle of the day.
What day, it's a weekday, I'm assuming.
October 11th, yeah.
Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Tuesday, it's the Tuesday after the league conference.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to commit now, but,
Well, I can commit, I just was waiting on Danny to do it.
Thank you.
I was just waiting on you to do it.
Yeah, thank you, Ron, you're nice.
I'll do it.
Can you be there?
Well, sure, I'm retired,
All
I'm
right.
available.
All right.
That gives me something to do every day that week.
Good deal, yeah.
Lynn, am I going with you?
To
The
the-
emergency management thing?
You are, but that's on September 19th.
That's okay, that's pretty close to the house.
You'll have time to get back
Yeah.
before that.
Especially the way I drive.
Okay, good. Yeah, I encourage you to have a look at that material I put together for that. I don't know how it'll kind of evolve. I assume it'll evolve a little bit. We'll have the first meeting, and if people see value in it, we'll have quarterly meetings every day from, every year from now forever. If they don't, then I guess we won't. But
And
I
on the
think-
snacks you bring, Mike.
I know, I'm thinking about, it'll be after lunch, so some dessert or something. The other thing I wanted to ask, Kathy Ross with the Historical Society has asked for the use of this room on October 26th for a presentation, a historical presentation, I think that's been done before. Tim, you knew a little bit.
Yeah, there's an Indian guy, I think, comes
Yeah.
and make the presentation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was at that meeting.
She's asked, and she did it here before, and I think the room works well because we have some AV equipment and it's kind of centralized for her. She's requested the use of the room. And it brings up sort of a host of questions about, well, what sort of, public access do we want to provide to the council chambers? We have meeting space down in the community center that's for rent that, we do all the time. I think those sorts of discussions need to be made in a kind of a policy setting. And we've intended to, and we still intend to have that discussion, sort of a facility master plan for City Hall.
Yeah.
In terms of what rooms are gonna be used for what purposes and when, and how much
Yeah.
will it cost to upgrade this and that. And so, and this sort of discussion rolls into that, do we make this room open for the general public? And if it's the Historical Society, then if it's the Rotary and the Masons, and, I don't think we're gonna get through all that before October 26th. I don't see any harm in it. It's obviously up to the council. It's not something that we do all the time, but it's not a request that we get all the time either. So if we start doing it, we might start getting requests. But, so it's a risk we take if we say yes to this, that we're gonna have other,
But we can still have the policy discussion and
yeah,
and
yeah,
if it becomes a problem.
I don't see a flood of these requests coming. And, the other thing with the Historical Society is that, they have asked for, they have a desire for kind of a permanent home somewhere, in the building. And that's something that we need to, and I've told Kathy that, about the whole facility use sort of planning. And they're okay, I think, holding off, on that.
Yeah, I went to their meeting,
Yeah.
the other night.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're okay with holding off. They're struggling to find a place to meet, so
Yeah.
the, long-term, they got some ideas on long-term. And that's when we'll have to look at whether we got room for them somewhere or not.
Right.
Yeah, well, I think we do too.
Yeah. So is everybody, are we okay if we?
I'm okay with having the Historical Society do their.
You're not in charge of her either.
Oh,
I don't think she has any money.
We don't have a structure for charging anybody
Right.
for this room.
Yeah. They've got money, but just not a lot.
Yeah.
Just membership dues.
What's that date?
October 26th.
That
I'm a
doesn't
member,
conflict
so
with
I
any
can't
meeting or court
say.
or,
No, it's a Wednesday evening, so we don't have anything going
I'm a member, so I can't say anything. So.
on. Okay. Well, I don't think we're asking for a vote. Just don't get mad at me when they show up.
I'm not against it, but moving forward.
Okay, well, that was all from me. Those are the two.
Okay. Patrick?
Just wanted to share with the council, Mike and I did have a reach out from a new attorney working on Joanne Thompson's situation with the development. He requested some documents that I got to him, so he didn't really share what their intentions are, but at least he's kind of digging in to see what he can do to try to.
And this is the property with the pending sheriff sale, is
Yeah.
that right?
Yep. And then I'll be in the parade, and then the car show, so there's a People's Choice Award.
I've got some
Appreciate
eggs
your
out.
vote.
I'm ready. You're
Good
right
for
by
you.
my house, big old boy.
It's
That's
a
all I
Corvair,
have.
so don't promise
Oh,
him
you
anything
get
yet.
It matches his tie.
All right, Lana?
Just a reminder to keep it on the front burner that the league conference is in Overland Park. You should have one of these in your little magazine you receive from the league's government journal. Early bird registration ends on September 23rd. So I know a couple of you have already said you plan to go, but I haven't heard from the rest of you, so let me know if you want to attend. And some good information. There's some really good workshops that will be there, and your city clerk will also be doing a presentation there at the request of the league on what your city clerk needs to know. That's all I have, thank you.
Did you want to say something about this one too?
Oh, yes, thank you,
Sure.
Rick. I sent out an email that I received from Johnson County Emergency Management, and actually Rick and Danny have told me they would like to attend, but that's coming up,
Ron and Danny.
or Ron, I'm sorry, Ron.
Thanks a lot. I'll probably just pass on that.
I already signed up. I signed up on my own stuff.
Oh, you did sign up?
I signed
Okay.
up as well, yeah.
I talked to
Kevin
Trent
doesn't need it.
Pittman today
I'll sign up
about
as
that,
well.
and
All right.
so actually we have 3 of you then, Ron, Rick, and
I
Danny.
could teach 400.
It's sometime this
It
month.
is on September the 19th, and it's in the evening.
That's why I thought, well, gosh, if they're gonna have it in the evening for me, I just will go.
Right, it's gonna
Last
be
time I
6
couldn't go
from
in the
9,
daytime.
6 p.m. to 9, and Trent Pittman told me today that they will be serving a light snack supper kind of thing at 6 o'clock, and then about 6:20 or 6:30, they'll start the meeting. So if you're coming straight from work and going there, then you will have a little bit of food.
Are you going?
I will be leaving
Are we going
City
to
Hall.
drive with her?
She's driving, I'll bring the helmets.
Okay.
I got an extra helmet.
I will leave City Hall by 5:30 so that we can get to Olathe and find a place to park around the courthouse. I know with an evening event like this, and there are several other officials from Johnson County cities that will be attending, as well as some EMS people. So if you haven't taken a class like this, I'm sure Danny and Kevin can give you some insight into it. Danny's been through all the ICS courses, and I know Kevin has as well on emergency management, but as the elected officials of our community and the ones who will be making major decisions, should we ever have a disaster, which hopefully not, but having worked and with clerks that have, there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of details, a lot of organization, and things tend to just really snowball when you have an emergency or some type of a disaster. So I would encourage you all, if you have the time, to attend this meeting, because I think it will really open your eyes to what can happen in a very short period of time when a disaster like a tornado or some type of major destruction comes through your city. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks. Council and Mayor, I'm gonna go first just for be different here. I talked to Bob Garrett here earlier today, and we got into discussion about his appointment, and he wanted to be reappointed. He enjoys the job. So he's the only one I've talked to. I know I got 2 more that I need to find out for sure if they're still interested or not, but I'd like to make a appointment of Bob Garrett, if the council approves it. For planning commission, yeah, sorry, yeah. So, ask for a motion to approve my appointment.
I'll make a motion, we approve the appointment of Bob Garrett to the Planning Commission.
You have a second?
A second.
Okay.
Who's that?
Seconded by Rick.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So that takes care of Bob Garrett. I'm gonna work on the other two here in the near future. So anyway, moving on. Danny.
I have nothing, Mayor.
Nothing? Ron.
Well, one of the things I was going to talk about when he brought up this meeting that we're going to go to, we talked a couple of years ago about what would happen if we had storms here, what if there was a place for the people, and we talked about maybe using this building, but when it come down to it, nobody would be in charge. You can't have the police and the fire guys doing it. They told Lana that they might open it up, but you know, those guys might be busy out in the area with trees down or people hurt or whatever. So what do we do if we use this building? And then again, what part of the building would we use? We talked about the hallways, can't put them in the gymnasium. And somebody.
We have locker rooms down there.
Yeah.
Pretty safe down there.
Yeah.
But who would be responsible for that, man? Well, we could never come up with that
Yeah.
2 years ago. And it is kind of important. You know, I talked to out here, remember that night we had some of them people come from this retirement out here, seniors? They came and wanting that, but when I went out there and talked to them and talked to the guy that rents some places, one couple said, well, we would go to Baldwin, down to our kids' house and get in their basement. And that's the kind of response I got from them people that were here. So, I mean, what do we do? Where do we put them?
We used to open the doors up. It was hard for us to maintain it because we would respond to emergencies. But we did use the center and the hallways down to the.
And that's a good spot.
Right
but
there.
I think it's a
don't know,
big
it's-
problem with insurance too.
Yeah, I brought that up that
You
night.
know, that-
So, you know, but I'm anxious to go to this meeting to kind of see what other people are doing in other communities. Now, Lana says other communities don't do that. She's talked to clerks and so forth.
That sounds like a really good thing to include as part of the facility use manual.
And it goes back to Patrick, a lot of that has to do with insurance, like if the building, you know, falls in and then, even though the city may not be liable for it, you know, it's a disaster, but still, they're gonna look for a deep pocket. I know this is something that KMIT and NPR have also discussed in the
I
past.
think part of it too is if you're gonna advertise that this building is where you come in a disaster and some staff isn't here to open the door,
Yeah,
you got,
then you're allowed, yeah. I mean, that was the
50
problem.
people waiting outside.
That was one of my things. The other thing is I was concerned about is are we going to get a report in the very near future about the city hall, the fire station uptown? I'd like to know what we're doing or where we're going or
Yeah, I can give you a report right now.
get after it.
Okay, they tore up all the back. They tore those stairs off of the back.
Good.
The street department, they've done all the grading, and they're just waiting for it to dry up enough to get the asphalt concrete back on. We have a report from the consultant that we use to, he's gonna draw plans and specs to fix the masonry on the south side and the block work on the north. He's preparing the documents to go out to bid. I think our intent is to have that for the first meeting in October. So he's gonna get bids for that work, so we'll look at those on October 7th, I believe. And remember, we've kind of budgeted within this year's CIP somewhere around 50,000, that we're hoping that work comes in at or around that. We have the back door that goes into the kitchen on the second level has been replaced. It was replaced this week with a new door. And there's a window in the front that we need to work on. And the air conditioning unit failed this week.
Good thing summer's over.
Good thing summer's over. We still went ahead and fixed it though.
Sheriff moved down here yet?
No, I'm letting them kind of take the lead on when that happens, and Jay's ready anytime they are. I think they really need to make sure with their communications.
That
And they
was
have
my other
communications.
But are we gonna be able to provide them with internet so that they can use the computer?
In detail, we haven't worked out yet. I don't know.
It's in the building, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, Sarah's got it. They can
Good
just
enough
use
for me.
Sarah's.
That's all I got.
Yeah.
Rick?
Ron asked Michael, I was just gonna ask about the sheriff move, but that's all I was curious about.
Yeah, they got communications kind of a debacle this week. Their whole system went down. I don't know if that played any part at all. We're just kind of letting them set the schedule on that.
And they used to microwave from here to the tower out at the fire station and then down south.
Then for communications?
Yeah, for the internet too.
Oh, really?
That's what I thought they did before.
Oh, okay.
That's what they do up there.
Okay. So they need to move that?
Yeah, because it had a cost for each time they moved.
Yeah.
Good.
Then Rick,
That's all,
how about you, Kevin?
I don't have anything. I'm going to that class as well, and I think this facility, I think if nothing else, we're talking about recovery. You know, we've had emergencies here, and they wanted to use our gymnasium for places for recovery folks to come and be. So I think that would be a good
Yeah.
discussion during that as well.
All right. Well, with that, I'll need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
In favor, aye? All right. We're done.
Hey, Mike, would you?
We'll try next time.
Okay, well, if you don't worry about it, I'll send it over.
When the ice storm
Yeah, I put it in your email.
Anyway, well, I'll call you. How long?
Okay.
Is it there?
Yep, I will. You bet.
Almost 50 minutes. It took me about 50 minutes.
Yeah, it looks like it's.
It takes me just as long to get to the 45 turns as it does to drive that 45.
Yeah, I bet so. That's kind of a winding road over.
And it goes down like.
No, it's good at home.
Well, if you don't, I can print you off one and you can put it in there.
Okay. No problem. Thank you. I just don't want to forget it.
Lana?
Yes, sir?
Take care. All right, man.
I don't know when I'm gonna be able to get these checks. I got chemo again.
Why don't you ask Rick if he wants to sign them?
No, I don't believe
Because some of those need to go out tomorrow.
I won't screw things on like this.
So if you don't feel like doing it, maybe you.
Well, I gotta be down there.
we all did it, Danny. I didn't copy it myself, so I didn't have this.
Hey, Rick,
Well, you
You're
know,
on the bandwagon.
yeah.
Sign
would
the
you
check.
mind signing the checks?
I signed them, sure.
Okay, because I got chemo tomorrow. All right. Be able to get to.
Okay, that's fine.
Do them now?
Yeah, I'll just do it now.
That's fine. Timmy, do you have time to sign these? This is on this way.
Oh, yeah. Oh. No, he told me before the meeting.
I just want to. I worked a year with them, start liking it.
Don't leave, don't print that.
I'm not going to. I'm not going
I made a lot of headway.
No, thank you for that.
There's a lot of, but I don't want to just keep going down the hill
Oh, it's in the other room.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, now that the street guys are not coming in here.
Yeah.
It makes a difference.
That's what they were doing in here the whole.
Now, they may have.
We had our state meeting down in the cafeteria yesterday.
County system.
Because they come in off the truck.
They had one here.
And I'm gonna be,
We need to get some booties.
Trees
We
to the
buy
tower,
boots. We need to get
county
some
tower.
booties. And then when they take
And
their
then
shoes off at the door.
They must
put
have
their
had one
booties
inside
on.
one south side.
yeah, and then I'm gonna make some signs
Air
for you
center
that
or not,
says no
I want to
filtering.
go, so I don't know if they bounced off something else before they got there. You know, I know there's
You know,
a water district in the water tower there, so I don't know if they tried to hit it or
Well,
something.
I've been wanting to put up,
You want me to go to that
You
meeting,
know,
I'm good to go, but.
when they get ready to do this, I wanted them to put up here, and if the county's gonna put up a little mask out here, I wanted to add a meter.
you
That
know,
one we
for
went
civil
worried
defense.
about.
Yeah.
But that
Well,
mandate,
that's- I was
we don't have to have a station right now, but, you know, I went to,
I'm gonna talk to Kevin that.
Thank you.
a deal down
I'll let you know when the next meeting is. I got it written down
Oh, they
somewhere.
had that big tornado.
I agreed to do the
Yeah.
dinner. Day before yesterday.
Tim, good luck
And we
tomorrow.
went down there and we took it,
About, you know.
just a
historic history of
laptop,
DeSoto.
and we had packet on
You
there,
can't
which
believe
is,
the
it's not voice, it's just digital data.
I tried to
And
get
we
you
were
to have,
connected to
let them people
the
at KU,
hospital.
assemble all that
Yeah.
stuff, but.
So you didn't have
So-
anybody
So,
picking up
you know, guess
chatter
who needs to do
over,
it?
over
Kathy.
scanners or anything.
He has,
It was
he's
just
got the
digital
round tub
information.
down, he puts,
And the people
puts
would
grain
type
in,
out,
you got one of them
it's
completely
family
full of
so-and-so
Pansy's
there.
papers.
And
Wow.
that would
Pictures.
come in and we'd type
You
back
can't
in
believe the
that,
pictures
yeah,
he's got.
family so-and-so.
Did you say
here,
something to me, Ryan?
Amy,
I said, good luck with your
Sister
chemo
Beverly
tomorrow.
and Dad and Mom both here,
Have a
get
good
blood
one.
and boom, right there
Good
when.
job. Hope
And it
everything
just
goes
takes
good
a
for
matter
you.
of seconds to do that,
Yeah.
and there's no,
Talk to you
you don't
later.
have to have a lot of operators, you only need two. You know, and a list of people that are at the center. And if they get that question back and forth, or somebody needs to get information to that center, and we all know how the first thing that goes down is the cell phones.
Oh, yeah.
And then these communications stay up, because all you have to do is send a car over with a 2-meter radio, and they can operate either in the parking lot, or they can operate inside if they want to string cabling. And packets is really the only way to go, or they could use PSK 31, it's a little more complicated. But the packet, the 2-meter packet system is really the way to go, and it's fast, and it's simple. You know, it just goes zoom, zoom, and it's done.
It's there, huh?
Yeah, and it's there. You know, you want a question answered, you send it out, and it comes right back.
Now, I'm not speaking for sheriffs, but I assume that that was the reason they microwave was for security reasons.
Yeah. Well, that's probably true.
And I'm pretty sure, I don't think they can get line of sight from uptown there.
Did my daughter